Hello and welcome to the November 2019 Gaming PC Builds of the Month, brought to you by NewbComputerBuild.com. My name is Corey. Brought to you again this month, we have the $1,500 build, the $1,000 build, and the $700 build. All three of these builds are put together in order to maximize the possible performance in any given game, given the most up-to-date hardware at the lowest price point possible, given the highest performance possible. So this month, we have a slew of updates. We have some graphics card updates in the $700 build. We have NVMe M.2 drives included in the top two builds, the $1,500 and $1,000 builds this month, significantly increasing our storage speeds, and then some memory upgrades throughout as well. So there's a whole bunch of changes this month, so stay tuned. Let's start with the $1,500 gaming PC build for November 2019. For the November build, for the November $1,500 build, this build is for those who want to game at the max settings at whether it's 1080p, which would be, you'd probably want to go with a cheaper build, but 1080p maxing out 144 FPS and above, or if you have a 144 Hz monitor, or at 2K resolutions at really high FPS as well, maxing out in pretty much any game out there right now at max settings. And if you wanted to play into 4K resolutions, that's who this build is for. So this build starts with the CPU. We have the AMD Ryzen 7 3700X, a phenomenal CPU with 8 cores and 16 processing threads. With that, we have the cooler. We have the stock AMD Wraith Prism cooler, which is the stock cooler, which performs amazingly, given that it's just the stock cooler, and I think it looks pretty cool. So you do have the option to upgrade that should you want to push your CPU to the very limit with regards to overclocking, but that's up to you. You can do that in the future, or you can simply make room in your budget for a better cooler. The motherboard, we have the Asus Prime X570P. This is a great newer version motherboard for the newer Ryzen CPUs, and it comes in at $159.52. The graphics card this month we have is the MSI Gaming GeForce RTX 27 Super. So that's the super version with 8 GB of memory. This card is able to push games. Like I said, this is what really pushes your performance into really high resolution gameplay and at the 2K resolutions into the 4K. This is a phenomenal card. If you did want to push this build even further and have a boatload of cash, you could go with an RTX 2080 Ti or 2080, but that would be up to you, and it does cost a significant amount more for just for more performance for sure, but with regards to price per dollar per performance, isn't quite as much as one would hope. For the RAM, we have the Crucial Ballistic Sport LT. 16 gigabyte kit of RAM that you see here. This is plenty of memory for most gaming PC builds. However, you can always have the option to bump that up to a 32 gig as well, or a higher bandwidth memory should you want to. This comes in at $74.95. Just backing up. The graphics card comes in at $509.99. For the storage for this build, we do include a faster NVMe PCIe M.2 solid state drive this month, and this one's the ADATA XPG SX8200. This is the 512 gigabyte version. This is one of the faster PCIe SSDs on the market, and provides really fast read-write speeds, considering that we were including SATA SSDs in these builds before. This one comes in at $94.85. If you want to bump that up to 1 terabyte, you're going to spend a little bit more, but do keep that in mind. But 512 gigabytes is a modest amount of storage for most gamers. Power supply we have is the Corsair RMX series, the RMX 750X, 750 watt power supply, which is more than enough power for this build, and that comes in at $114.89. And then the case we have is a newer-ish, came out I think not too long ago, but it's the Thermaltake S500 with tempered glass on the side. It's really minimalistic, sleek-looking case. I'm a fan of it. If you don't believe me, look up some reviews. There's some pretty good videos out there that showcase this case pretty well. This comes at $119.99, and in total, this build should be about $1,441 as of the beginning of November 2019. We do have some hardware upgrades and alternatives for this build if you have more or less to spend, but visit the site at newbcomputerbuild.com if you want to learn more. Now for the $1,000 gaming PC build for November 2019. The CPU in this build we have is the AMD Ryzen 5 3600X, which is a great gaming PC gaming PC CPU as well. This one comes in at $234.37. This one comes with the stock Wraith Spire cooler, which is still a really good stock cooler. Price is free because it's included with the processor, and in my opinion, more than enough for most people in terms of keeping their PC cool. This one, with the motherboard we have is the MSI Arsenal gaming motherboard, but it's a B450 Tomahawk. It's a B450 board, which means that you may need to flash the BIOS, but trust me, it's super easy. You just need to read the instructions in the manual that it comes with, or Google those. It'll take you like 5 minutes to update the BIOS if you need to, if it's not the most up to date, to be compatible with this Ryzen CPU. But given that fact, it's a more affordable board that still has a lot of really good features, but is a really good price when compared to a higher end board that you're going to end up spending more anyway, and may not necessarily utilize all the features that they come with. This one comes in at $111.99. The graphics card with this one is a Sapphire Radeon RX 5700 8GB, a really good card for getting solid gaming performance at 2K resolutions or high FPS resolutions at 1080p, and this comes in at $329.99. The memory in this build is the $1,000 build. Used to just have 8GB, but this month we have the Crucial Ballistic Sport LT 16GB kit. That's two 8GB sticks of RAM here, coming in at $74.99. This is given that memory has gone down in price significantly over the months, and we can really squeeze it into these builds without any issue. So might as well go with 16GB. The memory we have in this is the Crucial P1 500GB NVMe PCIe M.2 SSD. Not necessarily the fastest M.2 drive, but it is still much faster than most SATA SSDs out there. So this comes in at $66.95. This is the 500GB version, and for I think it's about $90 or so, give or take. You can bump it up to a 1TB version as well. The power supply we have is the Corsair RMX series 650X. It's the 650 watt fully modular power supply to keep things nice and clean in your in your build, should you not need to use all the cords. This one comes in at $112.99, and the PC case we have is the Thermaltake H200 tempered glass. It says Snow Edition right here, but this isn't the Snow Edition, it's the black version. It also comes in white as well. And this comes in at $79.99, and for a total of $1,011, so just over our $1,000 budget, but I think it's quite worth it given all the performance that we squeezed into this build. Like I said, hardware alternatives available at newbcomputerbuild.com, and if you go to the $1,000 build, you can click to read more. We have the best $700 gaming PC build for November 2019. This is, I would say, the everyday gamer sort of build. It's the build that you can game at 1080p resolutions and more than exceed the 60 frames per second standard on a standard HD resolution 1080p screen. Most likely usually getting way more than that in most games out there, but for sure maxing out all the games on the market right now at 1080p without a hiccup. So this is kind of the everyday gamer sort of build, and you shouldn't really need to spend more than $700 to get it. So that's who this build is for. So the CPU in this one is the AMD Ryzen 5 3600 6-core CPU, and that comes at $194.89, and that comes with the Ray Stealth cooler, which is more than enough to cool this build. This one has, for the motherboard, we have the MSI Pro Series B450A Pro. Again, you might need to flash the BIOS in this, and it's super easy, 5-10 minutes maybe. Just read the manual. And this comes in at a very affordable budget of $95.95. Now, we have a new graphics card in this build this month. We have the Gigabyte GeForce GTX 1660 Super version of this graphics card, which is really what powers this build to really exceed those 60 frames per second at 1080p. The memory we have in this is the Crucial Ballistic Sport LT. This is an 8GB kit coming in at $38.99. The storage is a basic SATA SSD. This is the SanDisk Plus 240GB SSD, which is more than enough to install your OS or your Windows and your most played games and software. However, isn't a ton of storage, but in order to make room for all of the higher performing hardware, such as the CPU and the graphics card in this build, we squeeze this one in, which is still a good drive. However, you can, for not much more, bump it up to a 500GB or even a 1TB drive should you want to, but this comes in at $33.99. The power supply is a modest Thermaltake Smart 500 watt continuous power supply. That's $40.99. And then the case we have for this build is the Fractal Design case that you see here, Fractal Design Focus G it's called. And this comes at $54.97. And this build will come out to exactly $700 at the beginning of November 2019. And we do have some upgrade and hardware alternatives available at the site, again at newbcomputerbuild.com. I hope you enjoyed the November 2019 Gaming PC Build of the Month. As per usual, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Feel free to subscribe or visit the site and leave a comment there, and we'll be sure to help you out. Until next month, happy building.